Hey, thanks for tuning in. And I'm here with my friend Levi Cosijn from Belgium. And he has been doing a lot of research work with astrology. And he's also been present in various other YouTube channels presenting his research work. So he's a student of Ken Rao, and he's currently, I think, studying with Ernst Wilhelm. And thanks, Levi, for joining me. And it's a pleasure having you around. And I'm just hoping to work with you more.
Hi, Ashwin. Yes, thank you for having me on your channel. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. So the research work that you have done, I mean, I think at least it is something that is in progress, which looks to be very, very promising. Is to find out the influence of to find out which planet has major influence when there is a stellium, which is a conjunction of more than 3 planets, whether 4 or 5 planets in one particular sign. So it's basically to find out which planet is stronger and which planet has the voice over the other planets in terms of influencing the results, manifestations of events. So, and you're using Lajjitaadi and Deeptaadi Avasthas. So I think it's probably not entirely established concept. So I think it's good to kind of present it today, and thanks so much for choosing the channel to present.
Thank you. Yes, the concept I got, I mean, was the first time that I really heard of Lajjitaadi Avasthas and Deeptaadi Avasthas through Ernst Wilhelm, because he really, put an effort into bringing these concepts out and to heavily, practically using them, and because they're very important. Now, first of all, the Deeptaadi Avasthas show the situation of a planet. This is based on true dignity, which is a combination of natural friendships and combined relationships, or natural relationships and combined relationships. So it's going to show the circumstance, the situation. And now, Lajjitaadi Avasthas show the fulfillment of the planet. Okay, so how fulfilled the planet really is going to be shown by the Lajjitaadi Avasthas. So how friends or enemies are going to help or hinder planets in fulfilling their responsibilities in their tasks, the things that they naturally represent, and also the houses that they rule, so the specific areas in life that they rule. Lajjitaadi Avasthas are based on natural friendships. Okay, so in fact, the Deeptaadi Avasthas, and this is what Ernst has examined and put forward, and which I have tested, and which works really well, is that the Deeptaadi Avasthas quantify, or qualify rather. So they qualify the Lajjitaadi Avasthas. Okay, so and when we look at a horoscope and we see a 4 or 5 planetary conjunction, there's so much. It's a crowded house, and how are these planets going to react? We have Sun, Saturn, Venus, Rahu, Moon, all packed in one house. How are you going to differentiate? This was one of the challenges I faced, getting into more and more charts and so on. So I think this technique, these two concepts, or these two principles are very worthwhile to include in your astrological assessment. And also it's a very, subjective thing, right? Deeptaadi Avasthas giving the situation. So, for example, if you're going through a tough time in your life, but you have enough money on your bank, you're living in a nice place, even if you're, depressed or something, but you're surrounded by, you're surrounded by a nice environment, that's going to be less heavy than if you're going through the same situation, but the whole environment is not stimulating you, is even more depressing, and so on. See, if you win, I don't know, $1 million tomorrow, it's going to, have an impact on the way you feel, right? Also, it's a circumstance. These Deeptaadi Avasthas really show the circumstance. They're not so much determining fulfillment, and also how a house is actually going to manifest, how well that house lord is going to take care of his bhava, but they're going to at least qualify it. And they're going to show how nice of a situation it is. If you're going, for example, you're working, you can have a lot of prestige in your work, a lot of authority, but you can't, but when, you know, that planet, for example, you're ruling the planet that is in a difficult Deeptaadi Avasthas, but you have, you know, good Lajjitaadi Avasthas, then you can have a very nice, a very terrible work situation. I mean, you know, maybe you don't get paid well or something like that, but Lajjitaadi Avasthas is going to give the fulfillment, and good Lajjitaadi Avasthas will show that you feel really great in that job for something like that, you know. But the other way around can also be, right? You can have you can be in a work situation or running the dasha of a planet in a great dignity, and it shows a good situation, right? You have a lot of responsibility, status, and so on, prestige. But then the Lajjitaadi Avasthas is showing like starvation, this kind of thing. So the person doesn't feel happy at all, you know, in the situation that they're at. So in that sense, in that way, we can see how these two avasthas, which show, you know, which means condition of the planets, are going to interact, or going to play out, and they can be used next to each other.
That's pretty much how we even use divisional charts when when the ruler of a particular house is well placed in the D1 chart, but with regards to the planet and its topic and the house and its topic kind of directly corresponds to a particular Varga chart or a divisional chart. And if that particular planet is not well placed or well dignified in the divisional chart, there could be a mixed like manifestations, where there could be a positive manifestation, but internally it could be very traumatic or even hypersensitive or pressurized situation. But from external point of view, things appear to be more easy and simple, but internally it is not. So I think that is I think it is the same notion with which we have to work with this avasthas as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. You know, you can look at dashas when people come in, or for example, and they have like, I don't know, an exalted planet running, and they're going through divorce or something like that, you know, and you think, just what is happening? So I think that's important then also to incorporate this. I mean, this is helpful when you encounter this kind of situation, that you're breaking your head because of what you're seeing in a particular divisional chart. And then if you include these avasthas, it's going to give you more perspective, I would say. This is what I find in practice, right? Yeah. So there's many ways of, it's just a way to kind of, because Parashara is very much about the whole subjective reality of things, right? How we subjectively experience things, how we feel about things, you know, feeling and emotion. It's not like Gemini, which is a lot more clean cut, off and on system, you know, and so we have to qualify things. I mean, Parashara is full of calculations, right? The Shabala, Saptavargas, Shubha Phala, and so on. It's all about qualifying things. And so because, you know, that's what we are. We are complex beings, and our minds are complex. We have a wide variety of emotions, of ups and downs. And so I think it's worthwhile to examine this, but it's not that easy, you know. I think also it's something that Ernst came out with quite late also. So really working on it, keep on working on it, on these avasthas, and then, you know, looking how we can combine them, how mathematically they kind of relate, and then see how we can practically use them. And yeah, it seems to do a good job. So I think it's worthwhile sharing. Good. You know, even though there's so much research going on, you know, on Vargas, for example, and so on, because this is not clear at all, and there's so much controversy going on in terms of.
Even I am kind of battling within myself in the usage of Vargas, and Rob Koretnik had done a huge amount of research in terms of how to use the Vargas. And I'm currently subscribed to the idea of using Vargas as, the Parivritti Vargas and the regular harmonic stuff. So I think that kind of puts me in a better position in terms of analyzing a chart, because there is not a lot of mathematical and astronomical relationships that we can find in some of the Vargas, but which cannot be used as a standalone chart, while the other Vargas, which has a specific astronomical or geometrical explanation where you can use it as a standalone chart, such as Navamsha or Saptamsha. So especially when it comes to those Vargas where you can use them as a standalone chart, I think what you are saying about Lajjitaadi Avasthas and Deeptaadi Avasthas can add real value. As it is, I've not used this, but I think I'll be super interested to use it. On the other hand, I'm completely using the other Vargas, which cannot be a standalone chart, as how we use decans or bounds or dwadashamsas in Hellenistic tradition.
Mm-hmm.
Which,
Yes, the
which is
harmonic
more
charts.
of, yeah, which is basically another part of dignity of a planet. So yeah, I think Avasthas is a good opening. I know Ernst Wilhelm has been a greatest proponent of Avasthas, and he has always spoke a lot about Avasthas. So I'm not really surprised that you are coming up with this, but I'm really interested about the research work that you have done. And yeah, do you have something to share on screen?
Sure. I just want to say also, Ashwin, is that, you know, like if you come from, like, the West is, generally speaking, it's known that the West is much more about psychology and it's not so much into prediction. I mean, of course, the old Hellenistic astrology heavily is, but, you know, the time that we're living in now is much more about, you know, psychological assessment of things and so on. I think that's also, Ernst is, you know, is a Westerner, and so also digging into that part, like the psychology and how we quantify things, qualify things on the subjective level is important. And so I think that's also one of the reasons why you know, he came out with it, because it's also a culturally, a little bit a culturally defined thing, I would say. Yeah. All right. Yeah, I have something to share. I think I have a chart. You know, I haven't looked at this chart either, because I mean, I have it here, but I haven't really examined it, just to also to have it fresh. You know.
There is a cluster of planets in Virgo.
Yes, exactly. It's like it's a five-planetary conjunction. So what do we see? See, how do you tackle this, right? You can see, okay, Saturn is there, right? Venus is debilitated. We have the Sun there. We have Rahu there, and there's Venus exalted. You know, I'll just put the Rashi here, right? Two debilitated planets, one exalted planet, and we have Jupiter in the 12th house. It says the seventh lord. The nose in the axis, you know, the moon in the fifth house. It's a quite interesting horoscope, I would say. So, as I mentioned, Deeptaadi Avasthas is going to show the circumstance. We're going to see how that plays out in the Vargas when we combine that with Lajjitaadi Avasthas. So first of all, I made a note, just giving some of these, giving the Avasthas here. Can you see it?
Yeah.
All right, so we have Deeptaadi Avasthas, which is radiant Avastha. This is when a planet is in exaltation in Mula Trikona. Now, again, Deeptaadi Avasthas are based on true dignity, right? So it's combining natural and temporal relationships. Now, Swashta Avashta is self-abiding or confident, right? This is when a planet is in its own Rashi. Pramudita is when a planet is delighted. Okay, it's going to feel good. It's in a great friend's Rashi. Shanta is serene when a planet is in a friend's Rashi. So these four Deeptaadi Avasthas reflect good dignities, right? These are the good dignified planets. Then we have Dina Avastha, which is scarce Avastha, which is Rashi in neutral dignity. And then we have Dukkita Avastha, which means miserable Dukkita. It's in an enemy's Rashi or in a great enemy's Rashi. Here we're going to use the same word, but here you see these percentages, right? You don't have to take that into consideration now, just to give an idea. We're not going to really quantify these things, you know, but just to give an idea, like Deepta and Swashta, they're going to both give a lot of fulfillment, okay, because these are the two in this system, in this technique. Then Kala or Beta Avastha is when a planet is low, depressed, or alarmed. This is when a planet is in debilitation. Okay, it's not going to give a lot of its In fact, it's going to give 0% fruit or auspiciousness. Dukkita and Beta are unfavorable dignities. Okay, so these 7 are going to be very important in qualifying the Lajjitaadi Avasthas, and some of them are similar throughout the Vargas. Okay, but the next 2, like the number 8 and 9, the Vikala and the Kopi Avastha, they are a separate breed. Okay, so they're not going to determine or influence these Deeptaadi Avasthas, the Lajjitaadi Avasthas. Okay, so Vikala is a planet when a planet is with a cruel planet. This is called impaired, right? So it means that there's some kind of problem with that planet. There's something that is impaired about that. It could be like a physical impairment, but also on a psychological level. Whenever you see a planet, with cruel planets. Okay, and then Kopi means when planet is joined with the sun, so it's going to be agitated, right? This is what Kopi Avastha is. It's agitated or frustrated. So we can see that. So these are the 9 Deeptaadi Avasthas that are given in Parashara Horashastra. Okay. Now Parashara also gives 5 Lajjitaadi Avasthas, right? As I mentioned, they are based on or determined by natural friendships. Okay, so here the Deepta Avastha is very similar to Garvita Avastha, which is when a planet is proud, right? This is when a planet is in exaltation or Mula Trikona. A planet is in Pramudita Avastha. It's very similar to Mudita Avastha, which is delighted Avastha. This is when a planet is in a natural friend sign, joined with Jupiter, joined or Graha aspected by a friend, right? Obviously, we're going to use Graha aspects here. And then these are the 2 good Lajjitaadi Avasthas, we could say, like the Lajjitaadi Avasthas that give fulfillment, right? Because it's all about fulfillment there. And so, of course, Lajjitaadi Avasthas also have a predictive influence, a lot more than the Deeptaadi Avasthas, right? Deeptaadi Avasthas are not really going to make the bhava work better, right? It's going to support certain things when a planet is in good dignity and it's conjuncting a house cusp, right? The house cusp that it's not ruling itself, but conjuncting, it's going to help that. It's going to throw its influence onto that bhava cusp, of course, right? So if the sun is conjuncting your 5th cusp, then it's in good dignity, then but it's not ruling the 5th cusp, it's just conjuncting, then it's going to help. It's going to give the solar quality to the 5th house cusp. So it's the graha influence. So we have these 2 good favorable Lajjitaadi Avasthas. Then we also have Kshuddita Avastha, which is the starved or miserable Avastha. See, Garvita is the Avastha of Venus, right? This is the proud Avastha. Here Mudita, right, is the Avastha of Jupiter, right? Joined with Jupiter. And then the Kshuddita Avastha or miserable Avastha is the Avastha of Saturn, right? This is when a planet is in a natural enemy sign, joined with Saturn, joined or Graha aspected by an enemy. And then we have also the Trishita or the thirsty Avastha, which is a planet in a water sign, only Graha aspected by an enemy, right? So a planet with an enemy in the sign, right? Conjuncting the sign is going to be starved. It's going to be Kshuddita Avastha. But only planets aspecting it's going to make that planet just feel thirsty, which is a little less severe than the Kshuddita or miserable, the starved Avastha, right? Okay, so we have the 4 of these Lajjitaadi Avasthas, and then here we have 9 of these Deeptaadi Avasthas. The first, let's say, what is it here? The first 7 are going to influence the Garvita, Mudita, Kshuddita, and Trishita Avastha. Okay, so when a planet is in Deepta, Swashta, Pramudita, or Shanta Avastha, it's going to give full Garvita and Mudita. Okay, so when a planet is in exaltation, then it's going to give full positive effect. Okay, now there's 2 other. I'm going to come back to this point. I just you have to go through these last 2 here, which are exceptions. So the Lajjita Avastha is, of course, the ashamed Avastha. It's the first Avastha within the Lajjitaadi Avasthas, right? It's always the first one that gives the name of this group, this set of Avasthas. And this is when a planet is with the Sun or Saturn or Mars in the 5th house, or a planet with the Sun or Saturn or Mars and with Rahu or Ketu in any house in the Rashi, right? And that planet is also impaired, so joined a cruel malefic in any Varga. Yes, I'm gonna say how that. So whenever we see an ashamed planet in the Rashi chart, right, and we see that planet in a Varga joining a cruel planet, then that Varga will suffer shame. See, that's something that really works well. So because you're not going to feel shame in all areas in life, that's why we need to qualify this.
It's just that particular topic of that house and that particular divisional chart where things are going to be a bit shaky, but not the entire deeds of your life. So yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so we're only the Deeptaadi Avasthas are going to be used throughout all Vargas, but the Lajjitaadi Avasthas are going to be, I mean, they're all only from the Rashi chart, right? So except for these last two, right? These can be experienced when a planet is in a ashamed Avastha in the Rashi chart. And it is that same planet is conjunct a cruel planet in the Vargas or in a Varga, then that Varga will suffer shame as well. And then when a planet is with the Sun, right, this is relating to the Kopi, this is when a planet is in Kshobita Avastha. I think I didn't write it here. This means that a planet, I can just write it. Kshobita. See? This is when a planet is with the Sun, and when it's in the Rashi is with the Sun, then you can look at it if that planet is with the Sun in any Varga. And when it's with the Sun in that Varga, it's going to also suffer frustration, like serious frustration in that Varga as well. If the planet is with the Sun in the Rashi, but it's not with the Sun in a Varga, it's not going to feel that as agitation in that particular area in life. Right, so if you look at this horoscope here, because this is a lot of information. Just 1 second. Here we see, for example, that all these planets are conjuncting the Sun, right? So all these planets are in Kopi Avastha, right? So they're in the Deeptaadi Avasthas of Kopi, right, in the Sun. And they're also in the Kshobita Avastha, so they're being frustrated. So any planet, when the Venus is with the Sun in any Varga, Venus is going to feel frustrated and agitated as well. The same for Saturn and Mercury. But here, for example, we see that Mercury is exalted, right? But it's also with Saturn, which is, so exalted is Garvita, right? I'll just show it here, or it's in the Deeptaadi Avasthas, and which is the same, right? The Garvitas, because the most of these are based on planetary relationships, really, except for when a planet is joined Jupiter and joined Saturn. So they're similar, but here we see that the planet is exalted. Mercury is exalted. Oops, I think just 1 second. I think I'm gonna have to look for it. Oh, it's here. Oops. Sorry. So many, and what I want to say is that many things can happen at the same time. So we can have a planet in exaltation, but it's also starved by Saturn, right? It's also in the Kshudita Avastha. It's then delighted by Venus, which is the Mudita Avastha, right? So it's going to delight that Mercury. The Sun is going to agitate that. See, so this is a way how we qualify these influences. It's going to feel proud because and also it's the ascendant Lord. The ascendant Lord is also ashamed, right? It's the Lajjita Avasthas. Anytime a planet is conjunct the Sun or Saturn or Mars and with Rahu or Ketu, it's going to feel a shame. There's going to be a shame in respect to the life path here, in respect to the body also, right? Choices, making choices on the life path that are going to result in shame is indicated. At the same time, we see a very competent individual because this is a Mercury Lagna Lord exalted with great Digbala, for example, and so on. So that's a lot of influences, but Rahu is there. So Rahu is with shaming that planet. So there's going to be a rash behavior at certain points in terms of what direction to go on the life path. Mercury is, Virgo is about self-improvement. So taking care of health, friends and so on. Which Mercury is also an important planet there, but it's a dual sign, right? It's all about improving things, improving on the physical level and material level. It's an earth sign and so on. So you can mix all these combinations. There's definitely frustration on the path as well, as these three planets are not only they're combust really, right? They're super close to the Sun, and of course we're looking at combustion by looking. This is the projecting the planets to the prime vertical, right? So we're not projecting on ecliptic. So it's like true combustion, and these three planets are combust. So there is going to be a lot of frustration. See that? So here we clearly see a very capable individual, which is also the Sun on the ascendant, right? So it's going to be a strong solar quality. Sun Rahu showing like, okay, this is going to be, very, very confusing. The person is not going to know at all who they are in the beginning of life until, at least, 42 when Rahu has its maturization, right? Then, we have Venus is debilitated. It's, with Rahu. So that's going to be like an interesting combination of, mixing conscious and unconscious desires. You have Venus also, connecting to Mercury. So there's going to be probably a lot of sexual relationships and so on, which can probably lead to some shame. Then Saturn is going to show some hard lessons to learn in terms of fulfillment, in terms of self-image, right? Venus is so important, especially for a woman in debilitation with Saturn, right? And here you can see this Lajjitaadi Avasthas scream. All these influences are indicated. So the left red here is the shame, but there's also the light, because the Sun is a friend of Mercury, right? It's conjuncting it. It's going to be feeling agitated and frustrated, but at the same time, Sun is also going to delight it. It's also a Buddha Aditya Yoga, right? It gives skill and skill. This is in a very skillful and highly intelligent individual and multi-talented, in fact. You see, the moon is starving Mercury as well, right? This is a Graha aspect. I just lost it again. So there's a Graha aspect here, strong aspect. So it's going to show that the person is going to, be into wishful thinking as well, right? So wanting to see a situation in a particular way as they please, but not really looking at the reality of the situation is also something that is going to be important. And then Venus is going to help Mercury, right? And then Saturn is going to shame it and also starve it.
Yeah.
See, so, it's a packed house, and it's the same. Then you can go for all planets, right? And the Sun is going to be, Mercury is going to be a neutral planet. Venus is an enemy of the Sun, so it's going to starve the Sun. Saturn is definitely going to starve the Sun. So here we see a lot of affliction to the Sun, right? But we have a nice strong moon here who's, throwing the fifth aspect here, right? So it's going to throw a little more than half of its strength onto this combo here. So in certain dashas, and see, that's the whole point. Like, for example, now this individual is running Jupiter dasha. Jupiter is in a great friend sign. So this is Pramodita, right? In the Deeptaadi Avasthas of Pramodita, right? The Sun is a natural friend, and then the Sun is also a temporal friend. So this is in a great friend sign. And, great friend signs, remember I put Deeptaadi and Swashta, both gave 100%. Swashta. And but then Pramudita gives, what is it, maybe 85% of its delight. See, so I'll just, I'm going to have to get it back. I don't know what happens. I think it's... percentages here. We see that the Deeptaadi and the Deepta and the Swashta Avashta, so when a planet is in exaltation, Mula Trikona, or Om Rashi, it's going to give 100% of its delight. Because these guys here, these four, are connected to the Garvita and the Mudita Avastha. Right? So when a planet is in these dignities, like for example, a planet is in Pramudita, delighted Avastha, or a great friend's Rashi, it's going to give 90% of its Mudita and Garvita Avastha. Right? So it's going to give a 90% of that. So when a planet is this clear enough?
Yeah,
Ashwin?
sure.
Okay.
I think we are going good.
All right. And then when a planet, for example, is in Dina Avastha, it's going to give 50% of its good Avasthas, which are Garvita, Mudita, and 50% of its bad Avasthas, which are Shuddhita and Trishita. Okay. And so the same for the bad dignities. Here we have the Dukkita, which is the planet in an enemy's Rashi, or in a great enemy's Rashi. It's going to give 35, 25, just give or take, right? It's going to give more bad than good. And so depending on its, condition. And so then the Kshuddhita and Trishita Avasthas will come out more, right? So the planet in an enemy's Rashi is going to give 35% of its delight of Garvita and Mudita, and all the rest, like 65% is going to be giving Kshuddhita miserable or Trishita thirsty, depending on the situation. And then a planet in Kala or Beta Avastha, low, depressed, debilitation, is going to give full Kshuddhita or Trishita, and full nothing, zero Garvita and Mudita. You see, that's how we can quantify it or qualify it. Except for Lajjita and Kshobhita Avastha, when they are happening in the Rashi chart, and the planet that is getting the shame in the Rashi chart is with a cruel planet in any Varga, it's going to feel ashamed. And a planet that is Kopi in the Rashi chart, and it's also conjunct the Sun in a Varga chart, it's also going to feel frustrated. So having said that, we can just look at the Navamsha, for example. Of course, right, the Navamsha chart can relate to the path. The path that we're on, our dharma, also our responsibilities and this kind, and so on. So, and of course, also for most people, it relates to marriage, right? So here we see that first of all, this person just entered Jupiter Dasha, and we see that Jupiter doesn't have any starvation to it. And this is very good news, considering the chart, right? We see a lot of starvation to the planets, to the Sun, which is important, starvation to Mercury, and also Venus. And of course, Venus for a woman is going to be important, right? In God, the moon is good here, so there's enough receptivity, and it's a creative moon in the 5th house, a realistic moon, right, with a Capricorn and earthy moon, but it's a good moon, so there's no affliction to the moon, so the person has enough receptivity to feel what she really needs to evolve in life, and she's going to be, it's going to help her with her dharma, because we see that the 1st, the 5th, and the 9th lords, which are Mercury, Saturn, and Venus, are ashamed, right? So the dharma places are all ashamed. So look, it's all happening in the 1st house. So in respect to the life path and the choices made, there's going to be some serious ups and downs, and psychological stuff to deal with. So luckily here we have a good period coming, like Jupiter Dasha is showing great. This is a very charitable person, right? We have this Jupiter in the 12th house, spiritually inclined. I'm just going to take more time off. Perhaps the 7th lord, which is connected to foreign places as well in the 12th house. So maybe she takes more off, or maybe she meets someone in a foreign country or something like that. But the fact that Jupiter is in Leo shows also that she's becoming a little more stable, in the sense that more happy with the place that she's at, because the Atmakaraka moon, and this is a Gemini technique, right? This is the Swamsha, is in Leo, and Leo is of course your own territory, and finding fulfillment at the place that you're at. And so Jupiter is going to help her with that. Jupiter is in a good dignity, in a great friend sign. So great friend sign give 85% of positive avasthas, which are the what is it? Garvita and Mudita avastha, and then 25% of the starvation. Okay, so here there's going to be no starvation because there's no grahas, graha aspecting this Jupiter to the negative. So this is good news. Like, this is really great. It's going to be a good 16, 18 years of growing, and in terms of relationships, in terms of inner fulfillment, right? Also the home is indicated here. There's going to be more a focus on moksha, right, which is 12th house stuff and so on.
Despite the fact that Jupiter is placed in the 12th house.
It's in the 12th house, right? It's in a Dushtana, so it's about letting go. But Jupiter in the 12th house is considered not bad. It's in good dignity, right?
Yeah, it's also not all that bad. Yeah, that's for sure. Yes.
Excuse me?
Yeah, it's not all that bad. There are so many other factors to analyze as well. So yes. Yes.
But in the Lajjitaadi Avasthas is going to show the fulfillment, but also it has, as I mentioned, it's going to be having a predictive influence. Like, it's going to be able to take care of its cusps. The 7th cusp is the cusp of relationships, right? Clients, also foreign affairs and this kind of thing. And also the 4th cusp, which relates to the home. So in terms of 4th house and 7th house stuff, the concrete things are going to be really favorable in the Jupiter Dasha. They're going to be things that Jupiter is definitely is going to be able to take care of, right? And that's a good thing. So great friends dignity means that the circumstances, which is going to have a lot of opportunity, because the Rashi is, of course, the path of the Deha, the path that the body is on, right? So the opportunity you get and so on. And, the fact that it's in a Dushtana shows, especially because this has been a super hard-working individual, that perhaps in the Jupiter Dasha, there's going to be more emphasis on letting go of things and looking for more freedom, right? Jupiter is also a karaka of wealth and of children, so more emphasis on these things. Maybe there's going to be some losses as well because Jupiter is in the 12th, but the fact that it's a good dignity, the fact that it's not starved, it has good Lajjitaadi Avasthas, shows that she's going to it's going to result in something positive. Okay. And if we see then Jupiter in, the Navamsha, for example, which is the chart of marriage, and this individual is not married, but, could play out, and it's in the sign of Scorpio. The dignity is also in a great friend sign, so it's going to give much more of its delight, and it's not going to give anything, any starvation, right? Because there's no starvation here. See, but then if we look at, for example, Venus, right? Venus is debilitated in the Rashi chart, so it's in Beta Avastha, right? So it's not able to give much, right, on account of being in Virgo here in the Rashi. And we see Venus is shamed by the Sun, Saturn, and Rahu, right? It's also starved by the Sun and starved by Saturn, right? You see how heavily afflicted Venus is between Saturn and the Sun there. And then Rahu is very close. Look at the degrees of these signs. They're all very, very close. Then there's a starvation of the moon, right? So it's going to make her a little lovesick and, all wanting and longing for love. And now we have a waxing moon here. So it's a growing moon. So it can give her, she's going to be able to build on things more in her life. All factors equal, right? Mercury is going to delight that Venus because Mercury is a friend. So it's going to help that Venus. Luckily, we have a good exalted Mercury here, and it's also the lord of this combo, which will help, right? Which will help this Venus, even though it's debilitated. So it's interesting because Venus debilitated also gets the light from the owner of this place, right? The same for Mars. The moon is a friend towards Mars as well. So I think that's one of the reasons why these debilitation places have, of course, their influence, but they're not the worst thing, generally speaking, and Venus debilitated would show for a more practical love and this kind of thing, or not really being fixed on romance and this kind of thing, right? So
but sometimes it is also hard to maintain relationships and kind of it also brings solitude uh, because of the fact that it is debilitated. Venus is the basic or natural significator of the fact about how a fellow human mingles with other humans. So there is a lot of solitude attached to, like, whenever Venus's period comes, or since it is placed on the ascendant itself, I think they prefer to be lonely at many stages of life.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and also Saturn and the
Saturn is,
Sun. Yeah, it's been very challenging for this person in terms of relationships. And then also we see Saturn right here, as I mentioned. It's starving it and it's shaming it. But this is a very difficult point, right? The Rahu is also in the first house there, So relationships are by the fact that Ketu is in the seventh are going to be, as long as the person involves themselves or sacrifices themselves too much for the relationship, there's going to be problems because Rahu shows in the evolution of the soul that it's important that she focuses on herself and her own path and coming to grips with the whole pathology and psychology, right? But we have a good Jupiter here, and there's Venus is also this was Jupiter here, and we have an exalted Mercury. So definitely she has good friends, many friends, and find a way to investigate through things, right? To get understanding about what is going on with this Venus and what is going on with the Sun, right? Because the Sun is also heavily afflicted, which can relate to the father and so on. But there's a good fourth house, so the mother is good and mother is really supportive and so on. So now if you look at Venus in the Navamsha chart, see here Venus is in a friend sign. So it's in Shanta Avastha, which shows there's more positive than negative. So it's going to give more of its positive delighted Avastha, delighted Lajjitaadi Avasthas than negative, right? But here it's a mixed bag, right? There's much more negative than positive. So even though we have 75% of good avasthas, it's going to be 75% of the 60, and it's going to be 25% of all the starvation is going to be coming through in this Navamsha. So it's going to be a lot of starvation, even though Venus is in a good dignity there in the Navamsha. And we see also that Venus is with the Sun. The Venus is in Kopya Avastha, right? This Shobhita, and here we see that in the Navamsha is going to be the same point. Of course, Navamsha Venus is going to be the important Karaka. So this is, anything that conjuncts the Sun is going to show a certain incompatibility, because the Sun is just that one planet that burns everything, and the Sun just wants to go its path, create its kingdom, and not really, it's a dry planet, right? It burns things.
Yeah.
So here it's on the ascendant also here, and here in the Navamsha, which of course is the path of Dharma, right, which is that higher harmonic, that higher octave, we could say. So important for the path that you're on and who you are and how you're growing. There's going to be some, there's going to be a certain kind of incompatibility which is going to lead to frustration in marriage, for example, and so on. In the Venus Dasha, particularly. But we see the moon is in Leo. It's aspected by Venus, so the person is, has a strong Venusian quality, a strong solar quality, as the Sun is Rashi aspecting, and Mercury is going to make her very capable of, taking care of business, even though it's a very bumpy road, which is indicated by the Rashi chart, the path that this individual is on. Right. So if we look at, for example, the connection to the siblings, I'm just going to put the contemporary charts up here, I should say the Parashara charts, right? And here we see, for example, that Venus is going to feel starvation, right? In terms of siblings, right? The D3 chart, Venus is ashamed by Saturn, Sun, and Rahu in the Rashi chart. So I said that when a planet is conjunct a malefic in a Varga chart, it's good that shame is going to be carried over. And we also see the Sun here. So there's going to be shame in respect to siblings, in respect to her teammates, and also some agitation regarding that. And this is going to be particularly coming out in the Venus Dasha or any Antardasha that connects to. See, so I mean, that's the idea. I think that's a very, I think Ernst did a great job in finding a system that makes it able to distinguish more, to differentiate more between, I mean, in what is going on in terms of psychology also. Right. So here, and what I'm saying here is also really playing out in a person's life. So then in the Saptamsha, for example, which is relates to children, we see Venus in a great dignity. Right. It's in Mula Trikon. Is it? No, it's in an own house. Sorry, it's not in. Yeah. So this is relating to children. There's going to be some frustration because, again, the sun is there. So it's going to be Kopi. This is Kopi Avastha. So the agitation and frustration is going to be there. But the Venus is in its own sign. So it's in Shwasta Avastha. And so it's going to, there's not going to be any starvation there. But the frustration is going to be there because these last two avasthas, or Lajjita and Shobhita Avastha, do carry through the Vargas. Right, and then you can go deeper. Right, you can look at, but which we're not going to do now because what is Venus really doing in this chart? Right here, it's ruling the 6th house cusp, the 5th cusp as well, which is connected to the child. Of course, it's the body of the child. The 5th house, and you can go deeper into that and experiment with that and see how it reflects for the person, how it plays out for the person. You also see that Jupiter is debilitated here, so it's in the Deeptaadi Avasthas of Dita, right? So it's in a low, depressed, alarmed dignity. So none of its Garvita or Mudita is going to come through in the Saptamsha and the Jupiter Dasha. So it's going to be a little difficult. But there's no starvation, luckily, right? Otherwise, this Jupiter would have suffered in respect to children and so on. And also co-creating, right? Saptamsha also can connect to, co-creating with another person. So there's going to be some challenges there. But it's not the baddest thing. So the circumstance can be a little difficult. And regarding children, right? Jupiter has the Karaka for it. And also, it's in the 7th house, so there could be some difficulty there, but it's not going to be too bad because of the positive Lajjitaadi Avasthas given in the Rashi chart or calculated from the Rashi chart. So these Avasthas are going to just set up the person, right? It's going to they're calculated in the Rashi, and then we can modify this, we can qualify this and see and get some more ideas on how it's going to play out in several areas in life, So, yeah. I think that's, the concept.
I think that's great. I think it takes, it's going to take a lot of time for those who are watching it to digest, because there is a lot of information, especially with regards to, I think, 13 avasthas from Lajjitaadi. If you don't have anything more to share, I think we can just stop the screen sharing. And
Sure.
So it's going to take 1 or 2 times watch. I mean, more than 1 time watch for those who are not introduced to this concept, because I think it's a lot of information. But still, it's basically working out the nature of dignity of a particular planet in various vargas and bringing out the internal and manifestations and also the external manifestations, so which necessarily not be the same. So that's what we are going to analyze in terms of how a particular planet's position and its avastha is going to bring about a change in terms of internal and external manifestations.
Yes, and the whole point is that because we see charts that have great dignities, right? But then there's all these problems, and you think, gosh, what's going on. This is a period that is exalted, and even the relative Varga, you know, there's going to be good situation, but the person is not going to feel fulfilled. There's going to be some serious problems in that Varga, and what is going on there. So it's just a tool. It's an extra tool to test it out. Of course, it's a lot of information on a short, you know, time span.
It's great. I think it's great. I mean, it's a research work, and it's great.
And it works, you know. And also, I'm like, whenever I learn a technique, because I try to learn all the techniques I can, or as much as possible, I just test it out. And if it works, if you get some good results without, you know, not, you know, paying too much, or how should I say, without too much effort, like you really see it pop up, and you take it, you just use a technique, and you'll see it really working. It can help you and it would, this kind of chart also, with when planets are conjunct, where you see a lot of different things going on, a lot of starvation, right? So a planet can be in so many avasthas. I mean, Parashara gives all these avasthas for a reason, right? I mean, there's the Balaji, the Jagradadi, the, you know, Deeptaadi, Lajjitaadi, Shayanadi Avasthas. All these avasthas are there for a reason. So I think it's worthwhile investigating. And really, all books talk about Deeptaadi Avasthas, right? People know dignities, and we just gave the names here. But few people, I mean, I feel that few people know really the Lajjitaadi Avasthas, and I think they're probably the most important thing I've ever learned in my, you know, astrological journey so far, in terms of counseling people, and in terms of how, because the planets represent our consciousness, and how these consciousness aspects are influencing each other, right? How they are determining the strategies that we apply to become fulfilled or unfulfilled human beings, you know, and this is what they show. So I think they're worthwhile. And
okay,
yeah.
So I think avasthas are pretty much, even I've not really worked with avasthas. I've read in various texts like Parashara and Saravali, but I've not really used avasthas in my practice. So I think it's one of those important techniques that I might research. I mean, I might test sometime. Yeah, for sure.
Yes, great, wonderful, cool.
Okay. So thank you so much, Levi. It was a very wonderful session, and we might get back with something like this very soon, and we'll see you then.
Thank you, Ashwin. Bye.